Only on NBC5 News tonight, there are a lot of interesting people buried at the heart of Medford near Siskiyou Boulevard. That's home to the historical I.O.O.F. Eastwood Cemetery, one of the oldest in the area. Many of the people there led incredible lives and left their mark on the Rogue Valley long before any of us were born. All this week, NBC5's Mariah Mills will introduce us to some of those diverse characters who rest there. To kick off our series tonight, she's telling us about Constable George Prescott and the political turmoil that plagued Medford in the early 1930s.
Many of you might spend your weekends up here at Prescott Park hiking or biking, but do you know who this park is named after? His name was George J. Prescott, and he was one of the very first Medford law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty.
Constable George J. Prescott was born on October 4, 1870 in Rockford, Illinois. He came to Medford in 1920 with his family and began serving the city of Medford as a peace officer.
He started out as a traffic policeman and rose up through the ranks.
Jeff Leland is a volunteer at the Southern Oregon Historical Society. He says Constable Prescott was 63 years old and looking towards retirement at the time of his death. His murder came during the Great Depression and a time of great political unrest in Jackson County. Leland says violence and threats of violence were prominent, especially in Medford.
During this uprising, what's sometimes called the Jackson County Rebellion, the Good Government Congress episode, where two newspaper men, Llewellyn Banks and Earl Thale, started this movement against the local establishment. It was kind of a populist insurrection.
Llewellyn Banks, a wealthy orchardist, as well as the editor of the Medford Daily News, worked closely with Earl Thale, an illegally elected Jackson County judge who shared similar radical political views to Banks and the paper.
This movement became politically powerful here in Jackson County and really challenged the way things were. It was a true uprising.
Would you say it's similar kind of to the political climate today?
I would say so.
Leland says ballots were stolen from the Jackson County Courthouse ahead of a recount that had elected members of the Good Government Congress to public office.
Oregon State Police and other law enforcement began an investigation immediately, and they were able to start putting things together and found some suspects that talked.
The investigation revealed that Banks and Thale were behind the ballot's theft, and Constable Prescott was directed to serve an arrest warrant for Banks. Prescott went to serve the warrant to Banks at his home on West Main Street around 10 a.m. He was accompanied by Oregon State Police Sergeant James O'Brien.
He was inside the house with his wife Edith, Llewellyn Banks was, and he was preparing to escape arrest up into the hills west of Jacksonville.
Banks's wife Edith opened the front door and told Constable Prescott that Llewellyn wasn't there and began to shut the front door. Prescott stuck his foot in the door jamb and attempted to show Mrs. Banks the warrant.
And at that moment, Llewellyn Banks came up to the door with his .30-06 Newton hunting rifle and shot Prescott dead. He died immediately and fell dead on the porch.
Banks was arrested and found guilty of murder. He spent the rest of his life in the Oregon State Penitentiary. His accomplice, Thale, served 4 years.
His shooting, his murder, basically ended the Good Government Congress because many of the members were shocked by what their leader, Llewellyn Banks, had done.
Leland says Constable Prescott had a well-attended funeral at the Presbyterian Church across from Alba Park. Today, Prescott still has a plaque in his honor established at Alba Park, along with a meeting room named after him at the current Medford Police Department.
The year after his death, the Conservation Corps, a part of President Roosevelt's New Deal, were working up here on Roxanne Peak and decided to name the park not only in his honor, but because he was an advocate of parks in the area as well.
Mariah Mills reporting in 1934, the coverage of Constable Prescott and the Good Government Congress in the Medford Mail Tribune earned a newspaper Pulitzer Prize.